North Carolina is still waiting on their first commit in the class of 2025. Is tomorrow the day?
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Thursday, September 26, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast. It's the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade. We are joined by our good friend, Coach Bill Robinson, the head coach of the Milligan University Buffaloes and a 2-decade veteran of Carolina Basketball School. And you know it, coming up this Saturday, man, there's going to be a book signing for Coach Rob's book. Coach, we're going to have you give us the details of that later on in the show, in case anyone's local there in the Northeast Tennessee area and wants to swing through. You're joining us at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and we want to thank you for making us your first listen or watch. Special shout out goes to all the everydayers joining us, the Locked On Tar Heels Discord fam, and of course, all our brand new Locked On Tar Heels insiders. Welcome in, gang. Let's get it going. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, coming up on the show today, Coach, we got several different places we are going to go. We're going to start with 2025 recruiting. Carolina is eagerly awaiting the Derek Dixon announcement, which will happen tomorrow afternoon. Could be Carolina's first commit in the class of 25, but there are also a couple other backcourt players in the class of 25 that are going to commit in about a month. So we want to talk about all of that. And then we want to get to, Coach, you've had a little insider at practice this week, and so we got some news we want to share, just some updates from that. Looking forward to being able to share some of those insights with everyone. And then we want to get to Coach's thoughts on the ACC schedule, which was released on Tuesday. Going to be a great and fun show. Always excited to have Coach's thoughts and insights on what, by the way, is a very busy week, and our guy is still here. So, Coach, big thanks to you for staying up late on a Wednesday evening. So here's the news. Derek Dixon, a 6'3", 190-pound combo guard in the class of 25. He's from Gonzaga College in the D.C. area. That's still a high school. It's not like he's playing for Mark Few. He is committing tomorrow, Friday, September 27th at 3 p.m. Eastern on the 247 Sports YouTube channel. Make sure you tune in to that. Coach, it's a final list of North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Syracuse, Vanderbilt, and Virginia. And funny enough, he is committing on his birthday. I feel like we hear that pretty often. Now, Coach, there is a crystal ball that's been put in for North Carolina by a guy that does his recruiting there in the DMV area. So that's a positive sign for the Tar Heels. I think before specifically talking some about Dixon, I just want to ask you about what do you really need in terms of like getting that first commit in a class?
Yeah, I think you just want to get that ball rolling. And it's no different than maybe having a tip jar there when you're working an event like we do at NASCAR or something. You put that tip jar, you want to throw a couple extra dollars in there. But once people see that there's some success happening and there is some movement, very often they'll get some other movement going. So you want to get that first one. You want to feel like you've landed one of your prize recruits. And it does give a sense of momentum and a sense of just we've really starting to get to where we want to go. Until that happens, not that you worry, you definitely don't worry at Carolina, but you do sit there and wonder, hey, this has got to start to come together soon, and that first one's a huge step for you.
Right, make that foundation and let's get it rolling. Now, what's interesting, Coach, is Dixon is ranked right around 50-ish level at 247 Sports, is known to be one of the best shooters in the class. And so, of course, Hubert Davis is prioritizing that because he wants shooting. Coaches, I mean, I know we haven't spent a ton of time on a player like Dixon yet or looked at him much, but what does getting a player like this with that sweet stroke do for you early?
Yeah, he's not just a shooter. He's a scorer too, and he can get to the paint. He makes other people better. So it's not like he's just a standstill guy. He can stretch the floor a little bit too. He can shoot the three, but he also has good mid-range. He can get shots off. He can make, again, this is one of my biggest things with shooters. He can make tough shots. He can make contested jump shots. And that's what you want to see at that next level because everything is contested at that next level. the rankings to me, and again, I obviously I'm not recruiting, those 4-star, 5-star guys, but the rankings to me are not as important as, is this guy the fit that Hubert wants? I had a conversation with Mark Turgeon once when Coach Turge was the head coach at Texas A&M, and we had a conversation. So it was a long time ago, but he said, one of the things that's really hard there is the alumni and everybody was focused on, we need to get the top, whatever kids in Texas. You got to get the top, 20, top 30, top 40. And he would find a kid that maybe he liked at 55 or 60, and he was hesitant to recruit those guys just because of their ranking. And he was like, I don't care about the ranking. I just want the best players that fit our program. So I'm not worried about the numbers as much. We want guys that are Carolina guys on and off the court that can play the system that Hubert wants them to play and that Hubert wants to coach. And there's guys who might be ranked higher that maybe he doesn't really want to coach. And maybe that's why they don't get the offer. So I like him. I think he's great. And I think he'd be a great first piece.
Okay. What's interesting then is just behind Dixon's commitment, about a month later, are both Braylon Mullins and Isaiah Dennis, two more backcourt players in this class of 25. Mullins being the highest ranked recruit out of each of these, although, take that with a grain of salt, as we were just talking about there in terms of rankings. But Mullins is down to a final 3 of Indiana, UConn, and North Carolina. He is an Indiana kid. He's from Greenfield, 6'5", 180 combo shooting guard himself. But what's interesting is he just cut down that list this week, Coach, cut out of his final choices Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, and Michigan. So all those teams are gone. You feel good about that. His decision date is not set, but he's aiming for late October, early November. Now, what's interesting about that is Isaiah Dennis, 6'5", 175-pound combo guard from Davidson Day School in Davidson, North Carolina, is down to about 6 schools: Carolina, Ohio State, Miami, Pitt, Tennessee, Wake, and Kansas. He has set a decision date, specifically November 2nd. That's right around that same time threshold as Braylon Mullins, Coach. So, maybe even put it in your terms of what you would be doing at Milligan. How do you handle those, those commitments where it's down to 2 guys essentially for one position? Because if you land Dixon, my guess is you're not going to get both Mullins and Dennis.
Yeah, we had a similar situation this year where our roster was set. We had 15 guys. We were done. And our situation is a little bit different scholarship-wise. We partials, and we still had some money left over. And we had 2 kids that we loved. One, of course, being a 7-footer, and the other a guard that we thought was really explosive. And we said, well, we're going to shoot from anyway, and we may not get either one of them, and we're fine. And we may get one, and we're going to be great. And if we get both, it's going to be we won't get both. Of course, we won't get both. Well, we did, and we did get both, and now our roster size is 17. But even if you don't necessarily think don't want both, if you get them, that's unbelievable. Now, chances are, if one of them commits, the other one won't commit. And timing is always interesting because the guys all have different agendas. They all have different birthdays, apparently, and that's a big decision making. But again, Hubert and I talked about this summer. He cast the net very wide. He threw out a ton of scholarships with the understanding that you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, and then if you get one, it may just deter somebody else from coming. And he was okay with that. That's just part of the recruiting landscape, and that's what happens. But he's not going to offer somebody he hopes he doesn't get. I mean, let's be honest. He did offer a bunch, and if he gets the guys that he's offered, he knows they're going to be very good. So I don't think they're as worried about the timing of it, and he's going to get to play the hand that is dealt him once he gets that squad come next summer.
And I would remind everybody listening and watching, it's get some, lose most, because that's the reality of recruiting when you're casting that wide net. It's like baseball. The best baseball players ever fail 70% of the time at the plate and get paid millions of dollars. That's kind of what college basketball recruiting is like. You're going to strike out infinitely more than you hit. Now, Coach, we had an interesting sorry. I did have one other question for you on that. How transparent are you, or how transparent do you think Coach Davis is with these players to say, hey, look, here's the situation. This is kind of like you need to know we're taking one more guard. Whichever of you commits first, and I'm not trying to play you against each other, but whichever of you commits first, that's who we're taking.
We're super transparent with our guys, and I think he is too. we have a small high priority list, and there may be 3 guys on it. And I tell them, hey, you're on the high priority list. We like to know as soon as possible. Our letter of intent or our offers have 2-week time limit, basically. But we can always extend that deadline. We never really hold it firm. But during the process, we're like, hey, we have offered 2 guys at your position, you and one other, and we're waiting. And if that is taken, then we're not going to be able to offer you scholarships. But take your time and wait, and we want to make sure you take all your visits and do what you need to do. But I do think that coach is very transparent and say, hey, listen, this is a situation. We got 3 guys at your position, or 3 guys that were for that one spot in that position, and once that spot's taken, we're going to have to move on, and you just have to understand that. And that's the way recruiting should be. You shouldn't, and we've heard horror stories of coaches, telling guys, hey, you're going to be the man if you come here, and they come there, and then 6 guys have all been told the exact same thing. And Hubert's just not going to play that game.
No, because if a coach will lie to me on the recruiting trail, why would he not do the same when I'm in his locker room, right?
Well, that's interesting to say that, because people are going to ask, well, how do you get a 7-footer? How do you get somebody like that? How do you get a D1 transfer like that? And the situation with Tamba, he basically said, I felt comfortable when I first came, and you're the first college coach that hasn't lied to me.
Oh, wow.
That's really, when you think about it, that's kids want to be wanted. They want to be in a place where they're going to get taken care of. They want somebody that they can trust, and knowing that they're going to get that education, and whatever happens later is great. But the kids want to know that, it's truthful, and you have to be truthful to them through that process.
All right, so we will wait to see if Derek Dixon does indeed commit to Carolina on Friday. Right now, it seems like a very strong possibility, but obviously you never know until he puts on that hat or unzips that jacket or whatever he's going to do. Coach, before we move on, we had a question from one of our Locked On Tar Heels insiders. By the way, if you would like to be a Locked On Tar Heels insider, man, I would encourage you to check it out. A free 2-week trial, and then it's just $5 a month after that. The link for that is in the show notes. You can directly text me one-on-one. Would love to enter into that relationship with you. But this one comes from Edward Inslee, Coach. And Edward says, so I was having a discussion with a friend at work, and we were talking about that we may potentially have to replace 3 or 4 starting spots next season. If we only get 4-star commits, and Coach, we know the deal with the stars and the rankings. We were just talking about that, whatever. Edward's friend thinks Dixon would, in that case, be the starting point guard. And then he goes on to ask, has a 4-star freshman ever started for UNC? So let's take those separately, Coach. Do you think in that scenario where there's no elite Cole Anthony, Kobe White type point guard commit in this class, if I can put it in that class, would you see Derek Dixon as Carolina's starting point guard next year?
I think you're assuming then that Elliot Cadeau has left, because that's no guarantee that he will leave. But I honestly, as a Carolina fan, still hoping that we can keep him for another year, and that he is sold on the maybe stay next year or get him up higher in the draft and all those things. I think that's we're assuming that he's gone then. My answer would be Seth Trimble. I still think Seth would be the starting guy. We've seen progression. We've seen him improve, not just as a shooter, which everybody talks about all the time. We're talking about running a team, being a point guard, and having that explosiveness to get to the paint. And I'd like to see him develop that, making that extra pass instead of trying to finish over somebody. But I think that's what he's been working on. I think you're going to see a lot better point guard play out of Seth Trimble this year. So I think those 2 guys, in my mind, at least Seth in front if Elliot's gone. But and then you still got other options. But I think Seth's the guy in that scenario that he portrayed.
And I would also like to throw in as a third option, or, maybe alongside Seth, our old friend TP, the transfer portal, right? I think I would go there ahead of a freshman Derek Dixon, who's still kind of growing his point guard skill set. And you don't want to do that unless you need to fill the hole. And if you do, that's probably the play there. And Coach, you would even mention as we were talking pre-show, even in an emergency situation, somebody like a Drake Powell can initiate the offense if he absolutely had to. So I like that thought as well. It harkens back to what Carolina did with Leaky Black at times early in his career. So
yeah,
that's And also, I don't want to forget Edward's question about, has a 4-star freshman ever started for UNC? I'm assuming you're meaning at point guard when you ask that, just given the context of the question. And the answer is yes. Marcus Paige was, according to 247, a 4-star, again, whatever with rankings. But he wasn't expecting to start. But with Kendall Marshall leaving after his sophomore year, Marcus was thrust into that role and did so. So, yeah, insofar as stars matter, there's your answer. Also, a very quick note on the way out, but just want to get this in as we're talking recruiting. On Wednesday, Coach Davis offered a scholarship to 26 shooting guard Wayne Cameron Holmes, who's actually the younger brother of Day'Ron Holmes, who just went, 22nd in the draft this year. And so it was a great player at Dayton. And so Cameron is the 16th ranked player in the 26th class per 247. So just another scholarship offer out there. Keep casting that wide net, Coach. All right. Now, next, we want to get back to what's at hand today. And that is Carolina's first week of practice is ongoing. Coach has had some spies in the room. And so we got some reports for us coming back from inside the Dean Dome. And we'll get to that in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. How about a couple lines for you? National championship odds. We're about to start talking Carolina's first week of practice. They are plus 2,000 national championship odds, tied with Baylor and Gonzaga. Leading the way are UConn, Duke, and Kansas at plus 1,000. Also, how about a football line for this weekend? Unfortunately, Duke is favored by 2.5 over the Tar Heels, although after what happened last weekend against James Madison, I can't blame the odds makers all that much. So if you want to get in on any of this action, go check out FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Coach, we are in the first official week of practice at North Carolina, and we'll say more about that here in just a little bit. But you have been able to just, from talking to some friends who are been at practice, just to get a little bit of feedback on what this first week has been like and some of the takeaways from it. So just wanted to ask you to just kind of go on that.
Yeah, one of the benefits of working camp is developing a relationship with the coaches and just calling and saying, hey, do you mind if I come over and watch practice? And one of my buddies from camp was able to do that this week. And I wish I lived closer to Chapel Hill. I would try to do that at least once a week to get over and see him play. But he had some really interesting insights on kind of what he saw. RJ Davis is pretty good. I don't know if anybody knew that, but that was one of the things he talked about, that, yeah, he's pretty good. And I think we all know that he's the guy, and he's going to be heavily relied upon to have major impact. He said Elliot Cadeau looked really, the ball came out of his hands really, really well. He shot the ball great in shooting drills and looked more confident. The shot looked more confident. His feet looked better. It just looked like a different type of player. So I think that talk has been, how important that was going to be. Obviously, Elliot knows that too, and he's put the work in. And I'm excited to see. The biggest thing for me, I think, he's got to see the ball go in early in the year and just know that, hey, this is a new year. Forget about last year. The past is gone. Just you got to press forward, and that's what he's going to be doing.
So that backcourt might be just a little bit decent, is what you're telling me.
It's going to be pretty good. The disappointing thing about practice for me was that Drake Powell did not practice. I think he's already my favorite player, and he hasn't played a game yet. But I just love his demeanor. I loved his personality when I get a chance to meet him, talk with him. And I just think he has the type of game that can just make everybody better. So we're not really sure. He didn't know why. He was dressed out. He was in practice uniform. He just didn't play. So that makes it seem to me like it was nothing major. So again, don't know all the inside stuff, but I can't wait to watch him play. So those were the exciting things that I had in front of me from his insights from practice.
Yeah, and from reports from Monday's official first day, Drake was out playing that day. I remember we were talking about Adam Lucas before we started recording, and he had written a nice little write-up from the first day of practice talking about Drake going up to try to dunk and Jay Wash swatting his stuff. So maybe his pride was just hurt a little bit after that and needed to sit Tuesday out, Coach. So that's good. look, I don't want to press you for things you shouldn't say, but just wanted to give you the floor if there's anything else from the practice report to share.
Yeah, they're just working on a lot of defensive concepts. And anytime you have a new team, you're working on new stuff. So apparently they're working on a lot of new defensive things. And of course, we all want to talk about the stats, the offensive plays and the stats and things like that. This is the time where you're really hammering the defensive end, and you're really working on how you're going to defend ball screens, how you're going to defend in defensive transition, and make sure everybody understands those type of concepts. So a lot of focus on the defensive end right now. And obviously they have been practicing for a while, but this is, the official stuff kind of makes things a little special, but they're going to be a lot more flexible in how they defend people this year. And I think that's a big focus right now, at this part of the season.
Yeah, there are so many unknowns given the makeup of the roster. And I think one of those, I think we've talked so much about how you utilize the backcourt, the front court in a non-traditional way. But I think that's one we haven't really talked enough about, Coach. You have multiple times this offseason to give you a lot of credit there, but what will Carolina do? Some things I would imagine is I wouldn't be surprised if we see them press more. I wouldn't be surprised with the lack of a traditional big, like if we saw more like doubling the post, just things like that could happen. I'm just spitballing with any of those things, but folks, I think that's really going to be something to watch for, is what does North Carolina do defensively to maybe try to hide some of the deficiencies that they might not have with individual rim protecting defenders.
The one other thing that we didn't talk about was Jalen Withers looked really good. His energy was good. He flew around the gym, and we know he's got that type of athleticism that he can do some really special things. Can he do it over an extended period of time has always been the question. And apparently he had a really good practice, looked very good the whole time. It wasn't just a play here and a play there. It looked much more consistent, and that would be great news for everybody. Jay Wash had a solid practice too. We're going to need those guys to step up. So it just depends on who's playing well, and on a given day, I think they're going to get the minutes. And you play well, you're going to play. You don't play well, you don't going to play. And I think that's all you can ask.
That's so encouraging to hear about Jalen Withers, because that's the hope, is that after having done it for a year, he really truly now fully realizes, like, oh, we were just messing around at the Yum Center in Louisville, and now I got to bring it at a different level. And having had a year in the system now, looking forward to that. But that's so encouraging to hear a practice's worth of just that ongoing capability for him. And Coach, just to specify, this was Tuesday's practice. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. So, folks, there you go. Great insight from Coach Rob from that report, man. This is why it's so fortunate that we get to have Coach Rob and all his intel with that. Coach, I did want to continue on and get to just a conversation, because also on Tuesday, the ACC schedule dropped. And we've known the opponents, but we finally now know the order, and most of the times actually, and how that's all going to come together. So I want to ask you to give us your insight on that. You as a head coach, what do you see when you look at it? What are your immediate takeaways? So that's the conversation we're going to get to in just a second. Right after I tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and then you watch the winnings roll on in. How about this deal? 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. Don't miss this deal, because it's gone when September ends, and this is the last weekend of September, so make it worth it. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Here's the funny thing. On Wednesday, I had actually picked Brave center fielder Michael Harris as my pick. The line was set at 1.5 hits plus runs plus RBIs. I took the more, and then the game got canceled and rained out. So I don't know, Coach, what's going to happen with that. We'll see. So if you want to do that and hopefully not get rained out, Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege and get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. We're going to wrap today's show by giving Coach Rob the opportunity to tell us what he sees when he looks at this 20-game ACC schedule, which dropped on Tuesday evening on ACC Network's Nothing But Net. And so, Coach, basically, I want you to take us inside your brain and through the lens of your eyeballs. What are you looking at when you see this thing roll out?
Well, the first thing I look at is the March 1st game versus Miami, because that's the game that Marcus, Paige, and I have decided to play our UNC JV Milligan game. So that's the first one I look at. Obviously, that's a big one for me. If I'm looking at the games, I'm looking, first of all, I want to see travel. I'm always worried about my guys. So do we have a bunch of travel games in a row on the road? You know, who's at home? Are they away games, you know, at State and Wake, or are they at Boston College and Florida State? I mean, those are the type of things. We know that a big thing for me looking at this is you don't have to go to Stanford. You don't have to go to Cal. So those are things that first year. And part of me, if I'm the ACC schedule maker, you know, those guys are going to come to the league. We're going to make them travel back here as much as possible. Okay, let's, you know, we're not going to treat them royally when they first come in and say, okay, you can have a bunch of home games. So I kind of like that. I think that was kind of good. But I am looking to see when we play Duke. I mean, those are always games that you want to have on your mind from day one. Those are more important than any other games on that schedule in my mind. I know the game at Kansas is huge, but those games are the ones that really, really matter. I know Coach Williams always felt like State was the one that they really hated the most and wanted to beat. But I think that's changed in the last few years, and it's really about Carolina and Duke. But that's really how I view things. And of course, want to get a good start. So I look at the early on games and seeing we want to get that 1-2-3-0 start to really get some momentum in conference. So those are games that are important too.
Coach, what's interesting to me about that start, so obviously you got the Georgia Tech game at home on Saturday, December 7th, but then at the beginning of like the main chunk, the 19-game stretch of ACC stuff, 3 of those first 4 are on the road at Louisville, a team that you don't know what to make of them right now because it's literally a completely new roster. Thankfully, you do know Pat Kelsey a little bit because Carolina played Charleston while he was there. But who knows if he'll do the same thing. Then you're at Notre Dame, a team that was starting to round into form a little bit at the end of last year. Then you get SMU at home, and then you're on the road at NC State, not far away, but Carolina owes them some payback from that ACC championship game last year. So, Coach, you talked about getting that fast start, but 3 of the first 4 are on the road. How difficult will that be?
Yeah, I think they're on the road, but their games, I think we'd be favored to win. I mean, they're, again, regardless of what those guys have, I mean, those are games you have to win. So you have to go in thinking we're going to win those games. As a young coach, I would go through the schedule and say, okay, we're going to win this game, win this game, probably lose here, going to win these 4, and come up with some kind of number of how many wins we think we could win. I just don't do that anymore. And I just don't think it's wise to get too far ahead. So really, that first one, let's just focus on Georgia Tech. Let's beat them. The thing that I look at this now is it gives me the ability to split up scouting reports for my coaches so they know when things need to be done, and we can figure out who's got who and come up with a plan and start working on that now. That's the good thing about having as many coaches as they have, is you can split things up and have, 1 or 2 guys, really they can split it up where you don't have to cover everything. Like my assistants, I have half to one assistant and half to another. You're talking about 15 games that each one of those guys has to prepare for. It's a lot easier when you have a staff the way Carolina has it right now.
Yeah. And of course, that then reminds us of the frustration of, hey, we're just getting this schedule. What is it, like right around 40 days before the start of the regular season? And so the further out the ACC had dropped the schedule, the more prep time that the staff would have had for scouting and being able to spread it out a little more. So every day lost is a day that you don't get to spend in that prep. That's difficult. Coach, one of the other things I wanted to ask you about is what I talked about in our live reaction show. One of the first things that jumped out at me is that Carolina literally plays every Saturday of the regular season from January 4th all the way up till the season finale on the regular season finale anyway, on Saturday, March 8th against Duke. How helpful is it to have that, like in the way a football team would, for example? How helpful is it to have the consistency of that playing rhythm?
I love it. I love the fact that you play every Saturday. And part of the reason I love it is just you get into a rhythm, you get into routine. Those are things that you're just used to on a Saturday, and you not have class that day. That's the time I want to play. Personally, this year, we've got a couple buys on Saturdays. We don't play. I don't know what to do on those days. Do we practice? Do we not practice? Everybody else is playing, but we're not because it's a buy, and it's an awkward time. So I've been able to fill some of those with non-conference games. The last Saturday of the season, we don't play. And like, it just seems really odd. What are we supposed to do that weekend? I don't know. So I do like the fact that there's some consistency with that. The other thing I don't like about it is it seems like Carolina's schedule is exactly matched up with our schedule, and we play almost the same nights every all the way through it. So for me to be able to get to a game this year, it's going to be near impossible.
That is very frustrating, Coach, and I apologize on behalf of the ACC schedule makers for doing that to you. But I mean, legitimately, that really is a bummer and is frustrating to deal with. I do think, and I'm curious to ask some folks that would be in the know on this, but I think the addition of the complication of the travel schedules for Cal and Stanford probably lends to some more of this consistency we see, where it's like, all right, it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday with a couple big Mondays sprinkled in. And so I think in that regard, that having those new schools is a big help. Coach, you mentioned, the Saturday, March 1st against Miami. That was the same team Carolina was playing last year when the Milligan JV was there. So great. Marcus Paige coaching the JV again. That's good to hear that. Will Sean still be helping him out this year? Do you know?
I think they're trying to turn it all over to Marcus now. They want him to take the reins himself. And I think Sean's they're moving him into bigger and better things, more important things. And they want to see Marcus get that experience as a head coach, just like that's what Coach Williams did before he got the Kansas job. The only head coaching job he had in college was the Carolina JV. So I think that's important to them, and it's going to be fun to see Marcus grow as a coach and just see him have that more influence on his guys. But back to what we were talking about too with the schedule, synergy for us is a big deal, because if I don't get a chance to see Carolina play, we have the same film editing system. I can go in the next morning and I can watch the game, and I can fast forward through timeouts. I can fast through, or I can rewind and go back, so that I can still get to see the games the next day. It's just not quite the same as watching it live
in real time. Yeah, but a nice, efficient way to get through the game quickly. Yeah. That's helpful. So, gang, if you want to meet Coach Rob, man, come to that JV game, man. It's always fun. I got to go to the JV game last year and sit there and take it in. It was a lot of fun. And then obviously to go to the Miami game that night as well. And I'm sure Coach would love to meet you, shake your hand, maybe sign your book, Carolina Basketball School, if you want to bring that along as well. So a lot of fun today on the show, as always, to get to unpack all of these various things. Coach, seriously, thank you so much, as always, for your insights, especially giving us willingly out of your time on what's a crazy time for you as you're getting ready for your own season. Gang, if you're not subscribed to the show already on audio and video, I'd encourage you to do that so you don't miss a second of great stuff like this. If you're not part of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord channel, man, you're missing out there as well, where we have great conversations all the time. Come for the Tar Heels, stay for the community. It's free to join, and the link is in your show notes. I mentioned it earlier, but would love to have you join our Locked On Tar Heels Insider program. You get a 2-week free trial, and then it's just $5 a month after that. You get to text one-on-one directly with me, and I give you free access as part of that to all of my stats and data and charts and everything else that I'm working on behind the scenes. All right, you know the deal. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow to get ready for this Duke game on Saturday. But until then, peace.